After we put the engine and transmission in, we moved in onto the bodywork. I first started on the hull of the car where I stripped the whole entire rear of paint. It was a large task. It was good once you saw some of that paint removed. That red paint was actually, I think it was a Mako job at once over a pre-existing red, so the paint haunts you because they're overspraying everything originally. So we ended up working on that for probably about 3 days just for the hull of the car, maybe 5 at most. And we got in there with a DA and a huge buffing wheel, or it wasn't a buffing wheel, but we actually have a sander for it as well. And boy, was that a mess, and you could still find dust all over the shop from that. I know I wanted to take the car down to bare metal. I just didn't want to half-ass the job. I know you can definitely just sand over and just do the body work from there, but I just didn't want to have the red there. In case the paint ever got scratched, I didn't want to see the red peeking through. I mean, it might be kind of a stupid thought, but I just wanted to make sure it was done the right way, so I just took it all down the right way, and then we worked the body work up all the way from there. After we stripped the rear, the whole entire hull of the car, we ended up moving on to the roof. The roof was a pain because it was pretty rough. There were lots of dents all over it, and it was almost a nightmare, but honestly, it took a lot of time. I can't say that I did it because my dad, he was the one, he does body work. I've never done it. I definitely helped with it, but I mean, he did the majority of it just because I didn't have the knowledge to do it. I mean, I could definitely sand on it, but final sculpting was not my ordeal. I mean, I'm sure I'll get better with it after time, you know. It's a trade. It's a trade for sure. It's a great skill, but it definitely takes a lot of time to work on it. He started doing that back when he was 18. He still does it to this day, so I mean, he's definitely built it up. So maybe one day I'll be able to get that good at body work as well. So the roof had a lot of dents in it. I think somebody pounded it with their fist. There were some big dents in there. There might have been like a tree branch that fell on it once, and it was rough. The sides and the back where where you could say the B-pillars were, I guess, or maybe C, I don't know. Wherever the rear, the top goes to the rear quarters, that was rough because of the vinyl top. The vinyl top, or there was one that originally came on the car that was black, but that must have went out probably a few years after the original owners drove it. It got rough, so somebody decided to put a new one on there. They ended up putting like an aftermarket one on there that had padding instead of just purely the top, and instead of purely the vinyl. And it ended up sucking up water, and it started rusting pits heavy pits into the roof. So it was definitely a body work wonder that it got that good. We were actually, my dad was very concerned about how rough it was, that he was essentially going to consider cutting the top off of off our parts car to replace it on there. I mean, the top in another car is like dead perfect, but it'd be so much more of a hassle to do it that way. So it took a few days for the roof to be done, but it definitely got there. The first step that we did in that whole entire process was I put I think it was like a undercoating, not undercoating, but a rust preventing paint on there. It's chassis paint. We ended up putting chassis paint on the roof, just maybe in hopes that it would get rid of the rust and whatnot. Honestly, I don't think it worked at all. There's a picture that I have of the top being painted completely black, and we were going to use this as a base, but the stuff actually flaked off, so I actually sanded the rest of it off because I didn't want the paint to peel later on. So it was kind of redundant that we did it. It didn't really do very much for the car, but at least we tried to do something about it. After that, we actually we used some kind of a chemical that's supposed to get rid of the rust. I mean, it kind of kills it off a little bit. I think that worked pretty well. It was much better than the paint solution. The paint was stupid, but I mean, you know now. But then we just filled it in. We probably had like 1.5 buckets of filler in the top, just because put it on there, sand it down, and then there'd be a low spot. You'd put a huge patch back on, and honestly, there's not too much filler on the roof. It's just getting everything so it's perfectly smooth. It took that many tries to get it perfect, but my dad did a great job on it. Once the roof was done, we ended up moving on to the front end, where we have a decent number of fenders kind of sitting around. My dad kind of collected them, I should say. So I had my pick of about, or just the two I needed. So my car originally, or the original fender for my passenger side, I think that was crumbled up at one time. So somebody actually replaced it with a Camaro fender, which is very, very slightly different. So it didn't fit perfectly, or the front was different. So we ended up replacing my fenders that originally came in the car, or were placed on the car. We ended up finding two that my dad already had. And man, were those things, they lived a lot before that. They survived like about 4 paint jobs. The one fender had like 2 layers of red paint, 1 of blue, and it had probably 3 or 4 layers of just primer. It was awful. And one of those layers being a red lacquer, and lacquer is such a terrible paint to strip unless you have like a Brillo pad or whatever it's called. And once you have it's like a composite wheel or whatever, and it takes it off really well, but DA it clogs up constantly. I was using about 80 grit, but it took forever. After we hung the fenders, we ended up moving on to the valence and everything, small things and bodywork. I didn't end up buying a hood until the end of the bodywork, because the original hood was was actually long gone. My dad actually sold it to Specialties a matter of years back, and I much more prefer the 400 hood just because the scoops. They look so much better on this car. I think it definitely adds a lot of character to the car. I love it. It's not functional because I don't have a ram air tub or anything. Maybe one day, but it's not all that important to me. I mean, it looks really good though. I ended up buying an aftermarket hood for it, and I think that cost probably about 400, maybe 450, maybe somewhere in that range. And honestly, the reproduction was actually, I thought it was really good. I think that it could definitely be updated a little bit to be like the original, I guess. I know on the sides of the hood, about mid-center of the fender, there's supposed to be a little rubber grommet that goes in between there, and the hood was never bent, so it never closed right until you bent the hood. So it was fairly easy to do, but we also did the fiberglass the sides of the hood just because the hood had like these weird warps in it from the factory, so it took a little while, and then I ended up painting that blue earlier than we should have, so we ended up having to paint it twice. It took a solid, probably like, I don't know, I'd say maybe like 2 to 3 months for the body work, if not more. Just because we were busy. You get busy doing whatever else in life, and you just don't have all the time to spend in a car, which is understandable. I mean, you can't put all your effort into one thing and just put off everything else. It's just not right. But it took a few months to get everything done. Fiberglass, sanded and smoothed out, primed, wet sanded, the whole entire process, the whole 9 yards. And then it was like in the beginning of my senior year, we actually ended up putting color on the entire car. It was about September, I think, maybe early October, and it was only a day process for the paint, laying it on. But after that, it was a long process of buffing it. I'd say buffing, my dad probably has about two days worth time in it. It wasn't a short process, and there were a few burn marks that you kind of have to retouch and whatnot. So I mean, it just adds more and more time. I mean, accidents happen, so I mean, wherever you fix it and move on. So once the body was done being painted in September, it kind of laid on the back burner for about 2-3 months until January, to be honest. I really wanted to work on it all that time, but the holidays came up and you just don't have time to work on it, and it's the same as this year. We ended up picking it back up in January because I wanted to have the car for prom. I mean, that was my intentions for it. I mean, that was my end goal. It was to have it by then. Might not be perfect, but there are always small little things you can update here and there. It's financially to it. You just need to get more money for stupid little trim things that honestly don't make a difference in the car unless you're doing a concourse restoration. But it's okay. I like it. I think it looks really good.